All right, everybody. Hello. Welcome to another Millennial Producers Academy. We're really excited about our speaker today and some things that are going on in, the world right now. Notably, if you see this this weekend, Comic-Con is going on live online, Comic-Con at home. Usually it's a lottery system to get in, and then it's hundreds of dollars to go. But this way you can participate for free and seeing all the panels. And if you're watching it later, Comic-Con does archive its presentations on YouTube. So if you go to their website or their YouTube channel, you're going to see hundreds of amazing conversations with artists and creators, how to professional tips, how to be a writer, et cetera, et cetera. So really excited. And we want to turn you on to some more resources on Canopy, some free films that you can watch. So today we're really excited to have a friend of the Media Arts Santa Ana, Lonnie Cupjoy. She's a PhD who is a producer, and she has made some short films that have become very acclaimed and have gotten awards at festivals all over the country. The first one we showed in the film festival was Truth Seekers, about some students who entered a state competition to bring something into the school curriculum, and they chose the repatriation in California. So it's a very exciting documentary about how young people can make a difference. And then she did two other documentaries centered on food justice, one being food medicine, and the other being Seeds of Justice, which she'll talk about, again, about a school program and how to teach people to plant foods and seeds and give it a whole other relationship with their environment and nature. But really, really great films. And she has a really interesting story about how she came to be a producer. It didn't start out that way, but I'll let her tell you herself. So please welcome Lonnie Cupjoy to the conversation. And here's Lonnie. Welcome to our class. I will hand it over to you and look forward to a very inspirational presentation.
Great. Thank you, Victor. Hi, everybody. I guess it's morning for you folks. Hope everybody's doing well. Please, when you ask me questions, just refer to me as Lonnie, right? Don't call me doctor and all that good stuff, right? We are colleagues and peers here. And, I'm just so excited to be able to share my experience, right? Because I know what it feels like to, I guess in some ways I love film, right? I love going to the movies. I love seeing and listening to different stories, and just that in itself was kind of what catapulted me into filmmaking, but not like in the traditional sense that folks do, right? So my story is I didn't technically go to a fancy film school, right? In fact, I didn't think I was even going to be a filmmaker, right? Or creating films. That was not part of my trajectory. And in fact, I actually was more a student in education, right? So I went to the local public colleges, universities in LA, and, going from that trajectory, teaching, right? And so part of my work was collecting stories as what we call oral history, right? Where you kind of go interview people in the community and you record their stories, right? And so that's part of my journey of how I began, or, in storytelling. I actually see myself more as I call myself that, a storyteller, more than I do, filmmaker, director, producer, right? Although I respect these titles, but ultimately I feel like there is a storyteller in each and every one of us. And it's just the beauty of our community, right? And so I have a very short presentation because I wanted to open it up more to questions for you folks. So I know that you had a chance, maybe some of you had a chance to take a look at a couple of the documentaries that I have. If it's okay, Victor, maybe you could help me make me a co-host so I can screen share.
Sure.
So yes, please. And so I do have just a few things I wanted to kind of share with you folks, a little bit more about my journey. I'd love to hear from you folks and what you are working on, your ideas and thoughts, and also to see how I can, support, right, in any and which way. So I kind of wanted to show, this is actually from my website, and this is my filmography piece. A little bit about myself. So let me go to my about page. Like I said, I'm actually a multi-ethnic native of LA. As I say, born and raised in the area. But I started out starting out with art actually, and like talking paints and photography. That's actually where I first started really doing a lot of artistic creative work. I mean, I would like sell my work like in farmers markets and art shows, and so that was kind of my work at the time. It was my hustle, right? Let me just open up that page so you could kind of see, because I really did do art. Here's my visual art page, right? So a lot of my work, I'm self-taught, right? So I did a lot of, masks and, that's my Loteria series, right? So I did work on wood, so a lot of different pieces, right? With color, watercolor, things like that. And then I have some of the social justice pieces that I've worked on, over the years. And I couldn't believe that at that point I launched my own company called Pink Jade Creations. And part of that work was, trying to figure out, how do I blend art, right? How do I make sense of the world, my identity, etc. So this is kind of some of the samples of the work that I've done over the years. And it's been wonderful, right? I actually started out in charcoals. I returned to it when I was in grad school because I was so stressed out I actually went to UC Irvine at the time. And I was so stressed out that I just painted like with charcoals, right? And it brought me comfort. And so from there, I actually entered it in a gallery exhibition for women. And, my friend was like, you should be putting this in a gallery. I'm like, no, I just do it for fun. Right. And so that was the first time I actually sold pieces, right? People were really looking at my work, and it defined who I was, as an artist. Right. And I had been doing it for a while and I loved it. Right. And then from this part of the journey, right, these are like a list of my exhibitions. In fact, I did some work in Santa Ana, right, and all over LA and different states, et cetera. And, I have little short video pieces in there that kind of highlight a lot of my work. And if we have time, maybe later we'll look at that piece, right? From there, I actually evolved into photography. And I didn't think I would get into that, but, I got tired of, having to pay somebody else to like take pictures, right, for pieces I needed to do. So I actually picked up, my camera, and I actually took one class in college, and I really loved that traditional form. So I stepped into photography. And from that, I've had the privilege of really working with so many different, folks and athletes and dancers and just different forms of just understanding bodies, right? And also what's important is, as you see, like in art and photography, for me, I see it as storytelling. There's a story behind each of these individuals, their lives, right? And what they have to tell. And so that was my approach whenever I would, photograph somebody, or, so I've done a lot of different work over the years. This is body painting work that we did at that time. I've done like sports and fitness. So as you can see, that's like a variety of work, right? That I've done over the years. And so I'm sharing this piece with you because I didn't think I was going to actually step into filmmaking. And in fact, my journey began while I was still in grad school, and I had a group of students that approached me with their teacher about an interest that they had in oral history and a story. And from that evolved my first short film, right? Short documentary, Truth Seekers. And I know you can't really fully see this, right? But this is them, and the label and all that good stuff, the poster. And from this piece, right, I was kind of reluctant I didn't have the time, I was still trying to finish my degree. But at the time I was also serving as a school board member and politically, right? And so there was a lot on my plate, but somehow I, accepted to step into this and document this story because I was also a part of it. And that's really what launched it. It was not, as we would say in my book, the most, how can I say, highly sophisticated piece, right? It was like 20 minutes long. It really told the story, using just images and video that the teacher took, right? So it was me kind of putting the pieces together, right? The event that had happened. And the only experience that I had prior to that, and let me just watch your eyes, I'm going to go all the way to the bottom. The only experience that I had with film at that time was doing these, what we call community-based documentaries. These were pieces that I created and I put on YouTube. right? And I started out doing interviews as part of my work with the university, interviewing different indigenous elders, right, from all over the world that had knowledge and experiences. And so I would go to on location and I would be filming them and creating these short, like 1-2 minute pieces about them, right? What we call like teasers, right? So this was part of what we called my Voices of Wisdom series. And so these are all different elders. These are some of the sample works that I've done over the years. And recently I actually interviewed poet laureate and author Luis Rodriguez, who has such an incredible, powerful story. And he's actually helping us at Cal State LA to kind of launch our exhibition where I'm working with students who are creating, they're non-film majors, but they're creating what we call testimonials, using their camera phones, right, kind of to tell their stories, right, or interviews. And so that's kind of the work I was doing at Cal State LA where I'm currently teaching. And so Luis was really gracious to sit down with me and kind of lend his story. If you'd indulge me, right, I'd like to kind of show the piece from him, right? Because I think it's short and perhaps it might maybe show you a little bit of a different style, right? So you can see my evolution, right, of how I started out. Because again, I did not go to the traditional film school, right? This is just work like me playing around with the camera, right? Angles. It's just me filming this, telling the story myself and kind of creating it. So let me go ahead and I'm going to show this short piece. Hopefully you like it.
Well, to get to understanding that moment of when I had a voice, you have to understand how silent I was, how voiceless I was. Most of all my arrests were for violent acts. I was on heroin, I stole, I burglarized. They hardly ever got me for any of that. What they got me was because I would rage. And I was in jail for a lot of violent acts, including attempted murder when I was 17. I was on murder's roll when I was 16. At the end, at 18, I was arrested for assaulting police officers. And I say it in quotes because there's a whole story behind that. In many ways, my fists, my violence was my voice. That's how I spoke. I didn't have to say anything. I gave people dirty looks, and if they dared to take me on, I took them on. I learned again through the Chicano movement that there's other ways to go, to think, to raise issues, to be strategic, to have language. And one of the good things that helped me is that I'm probably the only homeboy that loved to read. I don't know anybody that loved to read. I love to read because, again, my original sensitive life was reading and being in my imagination. So the reading was my saving grace. When I was homeless in the streets of downtown LA, that Central Library was my refuge. I spent hours there reading books. I think it might have been the Black Power books that came out in the 60s. I began to see that I could be a center of a story because Malcolm X's book came out and James Baldwin was writing and Aldous Cleaver and George Jackson, all these revolutionary people coming out of the Black Panthers, all the movement people. I began to imagine it's a weird thing that maybe I could do a book, because I was living such an intense life. If you read Perry Thomas's story and the ups and downs and the heroin and the crimes and everything he's been through, and I'm thinking, hey man, that's my story, He's in Spanish Harlem and I'm in East LA, but it's my story. And so I think that gave me the seed. Why don't you do a story? And I actually first began writing in juvenile hall, and then I did it when I was in murder's row at 16. When people were playing cards or maybe doing art or just talking, I started writing my first poems. That is the seed that grew into all my books, 16 books, and even having a bookstore and even having a publishing house, the Achucha Press. I knew that I could be the center of the story. I didn't have to be just a spectator to others. I think it has to do with the mutated male that I had to overcome. That, machista, power over others, dominance, that kind of male that was very big in the neighborhood. The problem is we don't know the big story. We have a big longing that our lives were traumatized. I need my story told. Nobody knows my gifts. Well, okay, that's important. But the big longing, the big hunger is that all our people, their stories aren't told. We don't see them anywhere. And then they try to homogenize us. I don't have no problem with Latinidad up to a point, but one point is trying to marginalize every Latino as one thing. We're not. Everybody knows that. We come from different parts of Latin America. Some are more white, some are black, some are mixed, you know. And again, I don't use mestizo, but I know all that. Some are indigenous. And so I don't stand by the nation state necessarily, because if you're from El Salvador, Guatemala, Mexico, Honduras, those are nation states created under certain particular conditions. But you got Mayans from Guatemala, Mexico that used to 10,000 years with the same people, and now they're divided by nation. We have to reimagine the world. And I say it's happening now because that's the clarion call you're getting from young people. And I really feel that that's the indigenous way of thinking. You need to save what's important, what's perennial, that's good, we keep. But we have to get rid of the stuff that has held us up under these illusions of power and dominance and race and class. We don't need to hang on to those anymore. Rather have a foundation of a house that we can build on that is the reimagined, profound, deeply welcoming, abundant place this country and this world should be.
So this particular piece, right, that I'm showing you actually was created with an iPhone for B-roll footage, right? It was just me, my camera. There was no budget, right? It was just, sitting down with this individual and getting what we would say like an intimate plática, right? A conversation, and then just kind of putting the pieces together. Now, I know in this piece, some of you might be thinking, whoa, this is a pretty polished piece, right? In the sense like of how it was kind of created. And not all of these pieces will be like that, right? It's kind of like my work evolved over time. I wanted to talk more, and I've talked about different films, right? And I know you folks have had a chance to take a look at it, like Urban Seeds. This piece, we actually, I was more the writer for the story. I helped produce it, but I was not the director of it, right? Our director was actually Adam Steele. This was a much bigger production. This was an example where we did have to, we did like a GoFundMe crowdfunding, right, to help support this piece. I believe it cost us like almost $9,000 to do it. So we had a cameraman come out, literally a cameraman, which was Aaron, sound, things like that. This would be what I would consider like a budget-based, film, right? Versus Truth Seekers. And it was just me, my camera, right? My sound. And I was just going out there and just trying to record, the story that I could. I wanted to show really quickly just the short, trailer of this piece, so you folks can kind of see the art of trailer making as well, right? Which is, it's got to be short. If you're trying to tell your story, you want folks to kind of be interested in seeing it or purchasing it, etc. So let me go ahead and open that.
Dear President Obama, our names are and we are fourth graders at Bell Gardens Elementary School in Bell Gardens, California.
So again, this piece is an example of a no budget, right? These were community folks that came together and were really inspired to be a part of the story and allowed me to kind of do this piece. And then my third work, right? And these are all documentary shorts, right? They've, as you can see, humbly, right? They've won recognition festivals and different awards. And I never knew, right, that, I had always thought in my mind that filmmaking was a big budget and blockbuster, and I got to go to the film school. And so I I guess like over time, I started thinking, wow, I actually am a filmmaker, right? Because yes, I'm creating these pieces and I'm putting it out in the market, and I'm not spending a lot of money creating them. It's more the stories and my heart, right? My corazón, right? Telling these stories. So the third piece, and then I'm going to just show you one more sample after this, but this one's actually food medicine. So we did this piece during pandemic, right? And actually when pandemic hit, a lot of big cinematographies, right? They actually shut down because of COVID, right? They couldn't do big budget, I guess we'll say, filming. And so a lot of independent making folks, right, that are like small crews, right, were benefiting from this moment in to a certain extent, right? But this piece is a little bit different for me. For food medicine, you know, my mom and I, we were like, we didn't want to lose our minds through this process completely, right? There was a lot going on. And so I actually said, Mom, what if I kind of document our experience of, you know, growing food in our home, right? And we were working with vertical gardens, crack gardens, right? You know, food that's grown in very small spaces, urban spaces, right? And just to see if we could grow it. And what we ended up doing was giving this produce that we grew to, because we had so much of it, and what we're going to do with it. So we actually shared it with our neighbors, family members, and we were delivering baskets, right? And then I invited some really close, you know, family and folks, right, to come and you know, pick the food directly from the gardens and whatnot. And so part of this piece, right, in creating it, this one was actually done with just my iPhone. And I think I'm just going to show you the trailer because I think most of you saw the main film. So we'll take a look at the trailer.
Ojalá que llueva café en el campo, que caiga un aguacero de yuca y té, del cielo una harina de queso blanco, y al sur una montaña de berro y miel. Oh, 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 ojalá que llueva café.
One of the things about this piece is that's actually me singing, because I'm also a music artist, right? So one of the things about filmmaking that I learned along the journey is if you don't want to give music rights to other people, create your own music and songs, right? And then you're able to self-contain and put your work out there, right? There's some limiting spaces out there if you don't do that, right? But for this piece, I wanted to do it, so I actually recorded music and put that out there. And for me, I love this piece, the film, because it represents the mother-daughter time that I spent, you know, coming together with my family a lot more, connecting with different people. Even though the whole world, we were undergoing and still are undergoing some major uncertainties, right? We wanted this piece, for me, it means the cariño that we have for our fellow, I guess, you know, humanity, right? And so this piece to me is very, very special, and it's short. I think it's less than, I'm trying to remember, I think it's 4 minutes long. And it turned into an actual project. As you can see, a lot of it is photography based. So they're just photos. And this is just something that I shot literally in my backyard, right? And I put stills from it, and you can see all of the different awards that it received in festivals. And it's been collecting. It's still in the year circuit, including this actually did participate in the OC Film Fiesta as well, right? So I'm very grateful to be a part of that familia, we'll say. And so I never thought that, like, just with my iPhone, I could create a piece and tell the story and have film festivals say, this is incredible, right? And the circuits that have really been responsive to this have been, you know, of course, independent spaces, but mainly folks that are environmentally conscious, folks that understand community and are trying to raise awareness in their community, right? Issues, city issues, things like that. And I also have family out in Santa Ana and Tustin, right? And then throughout the OC as well. You know, I have a brother that lives out in the OC, right? And so, you know, this story is also part of that. So it's not just an LA-based story, right? And so I really love, you know, the experience that I had in creating this, and I'm still going, you know, through it. But I'm definitely a living example that you don't need to do, you know, these large hour, documentaries or films, right, to get that recognition. And I definitely have proven that this was done with no budget as well, right? So it's really, if you have an incredible story that you feel passionate about and you want to tell, it's really about you just utilizing a camera, right? And right now in this day and age, technology is just so powerful and accessible that you can get the same quality as you can see, right, footage that you would see, in I guess we would say like big budget films, right, as well. And so it just depends on the style and the technique. So that's that piece. And then the last thing that I wanted to share with you is actually as part of the filmography. There's some other pieces that I do, like this summer, I'm actually teaching at Chapman University, and I'm working with grad students that are working on their teaching credential, right? And part of their work, they had to do what we call an otherness project. And they had to create some kind of a cultural form. And a lot of them chose to do films, right? Using their camera phones, and they're not filmmakers, right? But a lot of them were telling their own personal stories or testimonials about, a time when they were othered or weren't part of a dominant group. And there were very powerful forms that I saw in there, music writing, poetry, art. It was just so beautiful, to see that. And so part of going back to when you heard Luis Rodriguez's testimony is this idea that it's really important as individuals that we grab our phones or our cameras and we go out there into the community, into our families, and tell stories, right? Rather than waiting for the big budget to come to us and all that, or taking our stories to other people to make them, right? This is about having ownership of your own story, right? Creating it, writing it, and telling it. And so I'm definitely an advocate for that. And I've proven, right, you don't need a big budget to do this kind of work, etc. So the other piece I wanted to share with you, in addition to my filmography piece, right, is while I'm been teaching at Cal State LA, I also do these creative arts films. And so what I do is I ask the students to create historical memes. That's part of their midterm project. And what they do is they submit them for submission, and then I put them together in these really short video pieces that we publish. And I kind of wanted to share, I'm going to share one of them. And, this was probably the most recent one that we folks can see that. So this actually came from spring 2021. And this was coming from my Chicanx Latinx Studies class. But just to show you the kind of work that you can do, right? There's different formats, right, that you can play around with. And this was taking images and just creating stories from these images. So I hope you enjoy this piece.
1, 2, 3, 4. That's
that piece right there. And I did actually wanted to show one more. Let me see if I can find it really quickly. I know it's on YouTube. And it was actually coming out of my Latinx, my history classes, where I had students that were addressing anti-Asian hate, right? And so they wanted to create like a testimonial piece talking about, what was happening, what were they experiencing, but showing the beauty of it. And they also did their own film. And the interesting thing was these were not, they were undergrads, but they were actually what we call early entrance students. So they're high school students, right? That were coming to Cal State LA early, and they had no film experience. Here it is. They had no film experience, and they created this really beautiful piece.
Said, and I quote, "This racism was grounded into American ideology that homogenized Asia as one indistinguishable entity," end quote. Our cultural product is a compilation of my group's unique cultures that show just how diverse Asia really is. Asia is composed of a lot of small countries who have their own very unique heritage, unlike the common stereotype that Asia is just one big place where everyone's the same. Our cultural product demonstrates how this stereotype is wrong. Now let's begin.
This is a traditional Chinese folk dance called Ai Lian Shuo, or Song of the Lotus. It portrays the lotus flower, a flower symbolizing purity and grace in China.
So that's my actual student dancing. They're all performing their own pieces.
This is a dish called xian mian, or string noodles. Traditionally eaten on birthdays, its stringy noodles symbolize longevity in the Fujian province of China, another piece of the Asian culture in the United States.
The influence of Asia has also found its way into American gardens. Plants native to Asia, such as this tree olive shrub and kumquat tree, grow well in our Southern California climate.
Pagmamano is a common Filipino practice between family members used to greet elders when seeing them for the first time that day.
The song that I'm singing is a Farsi rendition of the American song The Dove. It was written by Ahmad Zahir, who lived in Kabul, where my family was also originally from. This song in itself represents how American and Afghan cultures merged to form something unique.
So that's a sample right there, where you can see that these were students themselves that recorded themselves and came together collaboratively to create a piece. And again, they didn't go to a film school, right? This is them just exploring and playing with film and the content and really trying to show the beauty, right, of how they view, the culture and connecting it, right? Because in this case, they were trying to, connect these ideas of this notion of Asian, what it means to be Asian American, much broader. And so I kind of wanted to share that because you can see these are different exercises and activities, right, and styles that I'm also working with students in developing, their sort of space as well, right? How do they create, expression and voice and, create these film pieces and out for community to kind of see. So I think I'm going to stop with that because I think I'm not checking on time. I'm not sure how we were doing on time, Victor, but I wanted to definitely I have a lot of things I could share, but I feel like there's plenty, right? And I really want to open it up to questions or if there's anything specific that you want me to cover or take a look at, Victor, it's up to you.
Okay, yeah, we will open it up to questions, but first I want to conclude the session. This will be posted on YouTube and say thank you for the perspective you've offered. It's really important when you're getting into video media to understand that, like in this day and age, as I've said before, you don't need huge amounts of technology and resources to do it. You just need to know how to do it, how to get something in focus with proper lighting, with sound, with the equipment you have. As you mentioned, you can do it all with your iPhone to shoot it and edit it and get really high quality. But the benefit of doing that over the long term is priceless, especially when you're talking about family histories with elders that might pass on and have their stories chronicled, with people like Luis Rodriguez, who's such a legend now, but it's important for people to understand how he started and to have him be so honest. And also I noticed in that video, which looks very professional and polished, you're using a lot of, I think, stock footage and some music that you can download from the internet. I use an app that's free called 4K Video Downloader, and you can download YouTube footage. You can get stock footage elsewhere. And if you're not using it professionally to make money, it's great as a tool to make these videos, to get high production value, to get used to editing, to get used to doing montages, and also to working with music. So you're not afraid to say, oh, well, I can't get the rights to that. If you're doing it as an exercise, you have all that at your disposal. to download right to your phone, to download to your computer and play with. So I want to thank you, Lonnie, for presenting today and giving a really important perspective, and really excited for the Q&A. But so check out Millennial Producers Academy. We're going to be here on YouTube, and we'll be posting all our presenters. We've got Ray Santisteban, a producer, lined up for next week. He did a film called The First Rainbow Coalition about a multi-ethnic civil rights movement in Chicago in the 60s. Very good. We'll send you a link to watch that. And he worked on the Visiones series that NALAC did, Latino Arts and Culture, and the Chicano documentary that came out several years ago on PBS. We'll be talking about that. But as always, we encourage you to pick up a camera, learn it, download some of these really cool free apps, iMovie, iPhone. We get apps like Filmic Pro, and become filmmakers. Tell your stories. Thank you, Lonnie. We'll see you again next week.